Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to, I'm calling it AMAZE Live. I'm Christine Koh, and I work with the AMAZE team. And I'm so delighted to have Leticia Barr on the broadcast today. Hi, Leticia.
Hi, Christine. How are you? It's so nice to chat with you.
It is so nice to chat with you because usually I'm seeing you when we're both on the road for something. This is our first, forgive me, people, it's summer. I'm perhaps like a little cheekier than usual. So this is our first dual Asian interview on AMAZE Live.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Yes.
Which is awesome. And yeah, I love that that Leticia's positioned in front of a piano. And you can't see it on the split screen, so I'm going to have to ask you to bring it around. But I spot Leticia is an award-winning influencer, and she recently won an Iris. I got to just brag on you for a minute. She recently won an Iris Award for the incredible philanthropic work. We're going to actually talk about the tech side of her work today, but I just have to point out, I see the Iris Award behind you. Could you please bring it around front? Because I can't.
But you have to show yours as well.
Because... Right. Well, when I saw Leticia's, I was like, oh, hey, girl, I have one of those too. So...
They're just visiting.
Okay, then.
Okay. Iris moment over.
Okay, we're going to focus now. All right.
Yes.
So anyway, friends, actually, I'll just get started with Leticia, and she's amazing. Leticia, I would love for you to actually kind of explain a little bit about your background, specifically, from education to where you are now, because I think that's really important to inform the conversation we're going to have today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this whole blogging thing really just started out as a hobby, 10 years ago. And my background is of a classroom teacher. I have 2 master's degrees in education, which is crazy because, like you're a neuroscientist and there's things from your background that you probably use, but it's not what you do in your day to day. And so I started out as a classroom teacher. My first job teaching was teaching first grade here in the DC area for a really large public school system. And my mom, who was a career teacher, she retired after 30 plus years. She said to me, first grade, she said, that's the hardest grade to teach. She said, you have to teach all those kids how to read. And I said, well, I really loved my school. I really loved the principal who offered me the job. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna, as my kids say now, go big or go home. I took that job teaching first grade. I taught for a number of years. And what I really found is that I loved integrating technology into my classroom. So just at the time that I was teaching, technology really, think back 10 years, 10 plus years of what technology was like. I was teaching on iMacs. There were no smart boards. Software came in boxes. The internet really was just a place that educational things were starting to take off, but not in the way that they are today. So I was finding, really good websites. We did things called WebQuest back in the day, where my kids would go on these little internet scavenger hunts, and there was information out there, but it was really tricky to find. And software, when you bought it, you weren't ever really sure that it was good or not. But I was part of this federal grant in my school, and it was designed to integrate technology into reading and writing instruction. And I absolutely loved that. So there came a time for me to, professional development and growing my career. There came an opportunity for me to work on this federal grant up at central office level. So while I spent many years teaching, most of my career was spent providing professional development for teachers on integrating technology into their classroom. So, that's kind of how I got to where I am today. I fell into blogging as a hobby, writing for my good friend Jessica McFadden, who writes a parent in Silver Spring.
Yes.
She and I met at a play group at a coffee shop, and we were like, oh my gosh, mom's friends, like people I like, yay. And we were playgroup friends for so long. Our kids have really grown up together. And she was an avid reader of blogs. And when she started her own, I was like, hey, that's really awesome. Can I help you? She said, yes, please, write about education. Something I don't know anything about, which is a lie, though, because her mom is also a teacher. So I helped her out writing, about technology, about education, really about like my favorite restaurants in the area. And she said to me, you know what? I really think you should spin off your blog. You should be the Frasier to my Cheers, start your own site. And that's what I did 10 years ago. So here we are on this wild ride. And I think, if the internet blows up tomorrow, it's been a really fun ride. But, I'm finding ways that I can integrate my background in teaching into what I do in blogging and sharing what I know as a resource writer every single day. So it's super fun.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's see. I'm losing all of my thoughts. First, That's 2 masters in educations. High five. Second, it really is remarkable when you think about, because we're both kind of old school, old guard boys too, and just how much things have changed. Even, I was just on an interview talking about actually the book I wrote with Asha Dornfest, Minimalist Parenting.
Love
and
that.
I was talking to, that book came out 5 years ago. And at that time, even we didn't have a technology chapter. And so, which is crazy, which feels crazy now, right? But things have just evolved so quickly. And then the last 2 tangents, and then I swear I will move on. One is that just yesterday, I was explaining to my 13-year-old what a phone tree was, like because in orchestra, if there was an emergency, the secretary can't call 150 people. Now we just fire off texts or emails. But I'm like, oh yeah, like you would have your assignment in the phone tree, and then you'd call the next person. And she was like, well, what happens if somebody doesn't make a phone call? I'm like,
and it all falls apart. Not a perfect system, but how it worked back in the day.
Yes. And then my last thought about Jessica McFadden, which this is so interesting. You guys in DC, you guys have an incredible contingent of former, or in some cases still educators. And it's really, really remarkable. So I just love that story about how that all started. And I also will say that Jessica McFadden is the type of person who, the very first time I met her, we were both on a press thing at Disney, and she is the type of person who helps you when you think you've lost your kid at Disney, or when your kid barfs all over you. That was me in both cases. So anyway, high fives to Jessica. She's awesome.
All those things. Yes, love her dearly.
So yes, so now you are, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you onto this broadcast is because your blog is called Tech Savvy Mama. You are deeply immersed in the good, bad, and the ugly of technology. And obviously it is something that so many parents wrestle with. And, we have conversations all the time at AMAZE about, how we deliver really solid information, and then also how awful the information can be out there. So anyway, I would be curious. I would love to know, what is 1 or 2 of the biggest challenges that you see with parents right now, related to technology. What's up in the conversation right now?
I think the biggest general thing is that there's a lot of stuff out there. We know that in the day-to-day. We spend our lives immersed in this social media world. And I think for your average parent, if you're not involved in social media to the extent that we are, we are ankle deep in this. It's crazy. Not ankle deep, actually, we're way up here. Yeah. We're not just waiting, we are full on in. But it's not just social media these days. There are so many other things out there that our kids are using, playing. Fortnite, I just read that there's number 5 something just came out, and my kids are gone, so they're not talking to me about Fortnite. But just, what's out there and trying to stay current is so tricky for parents because we're trying to do so many things. So I think knowing where to go and knowing what information is accurate, what information you can trust is a really big challenge for parents. And then also just trying to stay on top of what it is that's out there and finding resources you can trust is important.
So do you have, obviously your blog is a resource, and I'll link everything up. And also, if you're just joining, or if you're joining later, because I know a lot of people come onto the broadcast later, drop any questions that you have for Leticia in the comments, and we'll get to them later. But what are some of your, obviously I'll link up your blog in the comments, but are there any others that you would recommend, for current information?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite go-tos is Common Sense Media. Common Sense Media, they not just review books and movies, but they have apps, and they have really awesome articles about parenting parenting in a digital world that I think are really thoughtful. And they give you, I like them because they give you a lot of things that you should think through as a parent, and I think that's really important. There's a really good site too. I know that there's some parents out there who are, as my son is a 6th grader, he's one of the only ones in his friend group who has a cell phone. And a lot of parents are waiting these days, and they're talking to me a lot about how to know when your kid is ready. By the way, there's a whole post on that on my site. how to know your kid is ready, but also what to do when you get your kid a first phone, and the Smart Talk, which is actually a site that the PTA has partnered with. They have a really awesome cell phone contract, so I would highly recommend the Smart Talk. What I love about it is that you as a parent can go on it. It's a conversation starter, so you go on it with your child. You sit down together, you go through the site, you check off the boxes you want to talk about, and it guides you through a really meaningful conversation with your kids. And then at the end, you have a personalized contract that you and your child can sign, and you hold on, tack to the refrigerator or the bulletin board or whatever, send to them as a PDF. I don't know. But I think that that's a really good way for parents to start the conversation, but it's not just a one and done. I like to use the Smart Talk in the beginning, but it's also something that you can continue using as your kids get older and they start using social media and things like that. It's a great first thing to talk about responsibility with cell phone. But then as they get into social media, revisit that, use the Smart Talk again and see how things have changed, and just use it as a way to keep the conversation going.
I think that's great. I actually did not know about the Smart Talk, and I'm going to have to search your site for the how to know your kid is ready for phones. And you had, was it on Common Sense Media that you had an article also about phone usage? Or the wait until 8th thing or something like that?
I did. I wrote a piece about the wait until 8th because I know a lot of parents are waiting until 8th, and I completely understand that. But my article on Common Sense Media was about why giving Emily a phone when she was a 6th grader was a really good decision on our part. Emily now, she's graduated from middle school. She's going to high school next year. And in thinking about it in hindsight, those middle school years are so important for our kids. And having the opportunity to give her the phone when she was in 6th grade and work through these issues together. Certainly there's been issues with friends, and there's been all the middle school stuff that goes on, and talking about the phone as a tool. And with these things we've really learned together. But I'm grateful to have had these 3 years with her to learn about the phone and have these discussions. I feel like if we had waited till 8th, then maybe it would have been a little bit too late. She would have been left out of social circles, and she wouldn't feel as solid as she does now. So that my piece about how to know your kid is ready was kind of a reaction to that, because people then read that Common Sense Media article and they were like, well, then how do I know if my kid is ready? They don't seem ready. But in that piece, I think it's called 4 Ways to Know Your Kid's Ready for a Cell Phone. The big takeaway from that is that you never completely know your child is 100% ready. I mean, at some point you just need to take the leap and trust in them and know that you're going to work through these things together.
I think that's a great point. I think that, is directly connected to what you were saying about the Smart Talk, about how, it's something, it's not one and done. It's a conversation you need to revisit. And that is, of course, very relevant to sex ed, because it's never just one conversation. It's something that you got to do over and over again. I have one more question on this trajectory, and that is, I'm not sure, it wasn't one I had mentioned to you, so I'm not sure. I'm putting you on the spot a little. I'm curious about if you have any tips or tools or resources or anything for, like, I hear from so many parents who, we've been talking about, okay, we're on the precipice of this decision, now what? But I hear from so many parents who are like struggling with, my kid I can't get them off their screen, what do I do? So what would you say to a parent who's coming to you and saying, this is a fight all the time, I am so sick of it, I want to throw the phone in the toilet, but I also really pay a lot for that phone. How do you help families reel it back in?
Balance is tough, right? I mean, we know that in our day-to-day lives. I think, first of all, parents need to model the behavior that's expected from their kids. I think that's so important. We can't be sneaking glances at our phone at the dinner table if we don't want our kids to be doing the same thing. I think we need to be really realistic and honest with ourselves about our own behaviors and model what we want from our kids and be really conscious about it. And it's tricky because we know the push and pull of work, with email and text messages, and phones, people really have the ability to get in touch with us all the time. And as a parent, you just need to carve out that time, that precious family time, and have those times that you really just unplug. So I think in terms of kids who want to be connected all the time, one of my biggest pieces pieces of advice is find things that they love to do that gets them away from the screens. You know, people think that we have so many gaming consoles in our house. Our kids have phones, you know, we have, you know, a lot of technology, but at the same time, I think because it's always around, my kids are kind of like, you know, my son will commonly say like, oh, I don't have any homework. Can I go out and ride my bike with friends? Or, you know, Emily has no problem unplugging this week because she's sailing the Chesapeake. So when you find things that they really love and nurture those, they are going to want to be away from their phones and not constantly on them. But, you know, as a parent, it does give me peace of mind when Thomas is out biking with friends and I know where he is thanks to apps like Life 360. So there is that. I mean, he's not always looking at his phone and I don't have to text him, but there are really good tools that you can use as a parent to, you know, provide you with peace of mind and use the phone as a communication tool to ensure that they're really unplugging and having some fun on their own.
I think that's awesome. And just two thoughts on that. One is, you know, obviously we are connected to everything all the time. And so in the evenings, one of my favorite things is when I just leave. I'm in my studio, I have a separate door and everything. And I just, for the evenings, you know, after I finish work and then until bedtime, I just leave my phone in my office. And having it off the premises is very helpful. And I want to, after I'm going to stay present with you and I was explicitly not looking at my phone to look this up while you were talking. But I just saw on Instagram this morning, Allie Edwards, the incredible Allie Edwards, shared a beautiful, simple graphic that said something like, do more of the things that make you forget to look at your phone. So I want to share that graphic because it's so pretty and it's so fitting for that. But I agree with you. I even find, you know, if I'm going to default to, you know, the kids want to watch TV or something, if we just go out and do something, you know, it's very effective.
Right. And I mean, I think there are different kinds of screen time, right? There's the passive screen time and then there's the active screen time. So, you know, by all means, use those screens to inspire learning, but then use them to get away from, you know, use them to inspire learning and then, you know, for off-screen learning as well. So there is that. And parents just need to know the difference. Like, what are your kids really doing on their phone? Like, are they watching, you know, ridiculous cat videos on YouTube, or are they looking something up to figure out how to build something, which is something that Thomas does. So I'm always like, okay, what are you doing on there? You know, but there is a big difference about how you use screens. And we need to be conscious of that as well.
I'm going to give you an editorial idea if you haven't done this already. You could like put together a post with a really cool pinnable graphic about like what counts as what's mindless screen time versus like, or just X productive screen time things, you know? I don't know, just saying. I think you would do it.
Okay then, thank you.
I've always got the editorial brain turning. So just a quick reminder to anybody who's joining us, who's on now or joining us later, please drop comments or high five for Leticia. She's awesome. I want to pivot now because AMAZE parents, obviously, it's like the intersection of your parenting life and technology, the conversation we're having, and then they are just awesome with the sex ed thing. So I wanted to just pivot and ask you if you have any interesting story to share or a learning experience. It can be related to technology or not, but I'm just curious to kind of bring it to like the parenting real everyday life zone.
Yeah, I think, you know, with both kids in middle school, or Emily just having finished middle school, there have been a lot of conversations about health. Kids in our school district are required to take a quarter of health, and whenever it comes up, it's like, oh, health. And in health, I know why it's important, but I think that the way that the health topics are presented, you know, there needs to be some better ways that we're grabbing our kids' attention. And that's what I love about AMAZE. AMAZE has such great content that I think is so relevant. Parents think that kids are going to learn everything they need to know from health class and then it's over and done with. When the reality is, like, I would rather have these conversations with my kids first, lay the groundwork, have them go to school, endure the quarter of health, and then come back to me and revisit, or, you know, at least I know where I can send them. So it's been funny to me to watch this journey about health. And, you know, I think back to the required 5th grade parent meeting that we had in elementary school when this was just starting, and the kids had a couple weeks of health curriculum. And I went when Emily was in 5th grade just to kind of know. I'm like, oh my gosh, have I fully prepared her? Does she have enough background information? And I got there, and parents were really expecting that the school was going to teach them everything they needed to know. and more, when really it was just, it all done in a very age appropriate way, of course. But I go back to the fact that it's so important to revisit these conversations that we have with our kids. 5th grade laid the groundwork. It was about puberty and your body changing and basic hygiene, right? And then in subsequent years, you get into the more difficult topics that maybe are hard to talk about as parents. But as long as you know where to go and to find those good resources that make you feel comfortable, those are really important to share with your kids, because they have questions too that they might not feel comfortable asking.
Of course. It's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking, wow, you guys had a meeting? Like, we didn't.
It's required. I mean, the school is obligated to hold the meeting for the parents to kind of give you the lay of the land and to lay out the curriculum. And there were parents there who were like, wait a minute, you're not going to teach my kid about sexual intercourse in 5th grade. And then there were others who were like, wait a minute, that's too much. So you had people on all ends of, on both ends of the spectrum, and, really wondering why the teachers weren't doing more. But I think I wrote a post about that too, about, parents, you're not done yet, and why this is, you're really just getting started. It's not the school's responsibility. So. Yeah,
well, it's interesting. I mean, my poor 13-year-old, actually both my kids, I'm like, hey guys, want to talk about, like, I'm so into it. So, that happens. But and if it's not on your radar already, that is totally my bad. But one of the things that I actually love that AMAZE has recently launched is this parent playlist, and it's explicitly for kids who are aged 4 to 9, because the thing is, kids are asking these questions. Everybody has a kind of like deer in the headlight moment about the whole, like, where do babies come from? And one of the things I've really learned, just in working through this material and looking at it myself, is that we parents have so much baggage. Like, so when kids ask a question like that, especially, where do babies come from? I think our brains immediately go to, oh my God, do we have to talk to them about sex and intimacy? And, oh, I'm freaking out. Where really they just want to know, like, the mechanical, like, okay, where did this come from? And like, really, like, literally, where do they come from? Yeah. So I think, a lot of this journey for parents is unpacking or separating, your own issues, whatever struggles you had with it, whatever awkwardness you had with your own parents or guardians, and just keeping focused on, like, the short conversation. I think it's really challenging for people.
It is. And I think when our kids ask those questions that make us recoil, right? I think the next question is, it's not maybe to address their question, it's to ask them another question to figure out where they're coming from, right? So take some time to listen, because so many times it is just that innocent curiosity that they have, that they just want to know. But you're right. I think that what AMAZE has done by launching the playlist is so great, because talking about these issues in an age-appropriate way from the time that kids are very young, it gets them to the point where they're in middle school and these issues get bigger. It just builds on itself. And, that's one thing I know from my work with responsibility.org, is that you need to start these conversations early. They need to happen repeatedly, not just about alcohol, not just about sex, but, about technology and all the things going on in our everyday lives. Like, it's not a one and done. Revisit the conversation as our kids get older, because it changes.
Yes. Well, and I have a question for you. I find that most of my conversations with my 13-year-old happen in the car. Side by side, parallel is very important, apparently. And I have found that because she's actually the same grade as your daughter, they're, going into high school. And, the fact that she's hearing about stuff. I mean, even when, things happen in Parkland, she heard about that on text before I even had a chance to get to her, right? So I feel like the media is a real, ends up being a real source and a catalyst for conversation. So I'm curious if you're also finding that with your kids. Like, what are the key catalysts? Do they come to you? Do they see something in a headline and they want to talk about it?
They definitely learn about things through social media. I know that there have been a couple instances in our area where things have spread like wildfire on Snapchat and Instagram. So really behind the scenes, our kids know a lot and they're sharing a lot, and it's not bad stuff that they're sharing. it can be really positive at times as well. And it's, I think, creating awareness. It's creating kids who are conscious and caring. I think so many times the way social media is portrayed around teens is negative. And that's not the case at all. I mean, I think that there is that, but I think that there's a really positive side to it as well. And, you know, it's good to have, it's good for kids to be aware. It's good for them to share information, but it's also really important that we stay connected to them and we talk to them as well. Another really good resource that helps parents do that is an app called Bark. And I've been working with them to review their app just in the last couple of weeks. And Bark is really amazing. You set it up as a parent, you install the app on your kids' phones. It monitors for all kinds of things. It will pull up keywords about, it pulls up and notifies you if there are, if your kids are talking about things like depression and suicide, really like those heavy topics. Like, I know I've gotten a bunch of alerts because of alcohol, because of my work with responsibility.org when I've connected it to my own channels. But, you know, all these topics that we want to know about, and we want to know what our kids are talking about. It doesn't dive into necessarily the nitty gritty, but it gives you a really good overview and a sense of what topics your kids are talking about with their friends. So you can, you know, go to them and be like, hey, you know, any concerns about, it helps facilitate a conversation by knowing what's out there.
So interesting. All right. I have so many things that I need to look into the comments here.
Sorry, this Facebook Live has been like a huge to-do list for both.
I love it. It's resource heavy. That's what I'm into. I'm so into it.
Okay.
Well, so, and I could talk to you all morning, but I know we're kind of running down on time. So I just wanted to know if you have any closing thoughts. I mean, you provided so many good pieces of information, but anything we've missed related to technology, parenting, sex ed, anything you want to share about?
No, I mean, I think I'd just reiterate that it's not a one and done conversation. As our kids grow up and they change, they have their questions change, who they are changes. So just make sure you're checking in with them and revisiting the conversation, because it is different as they get older. That's definitely one thing I found with my two.
Definitely. It's an ever-moving target.
It keeps life interesting, right? As our girls go to high school.
I know. I'm actually excited about it, but you know, talk to me in a few months, I guess.
I know, right?
Yes. Well, Leticia, this was what a treat to see you. I think this is the first time we've ever video chatted, conferenced, whatever. So this is really fun to see you in the middle of summer. So thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom and your just general wonderful spirit today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. And folks, if you are joining this broadcast later, which I know a lot of you do, and you have questions for Leticia, please drop them in the comment. Leticia, I'll bug you if that happens. You do not have to keep checking in on it. And we'll see you next time.